Hey, YouTube gang. I've decided when I start my week for YouTube, I want to kind of give you a little personal reflection before we go into the three broadcasts I'm recording and going deeper with you. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about this last week in my world. I had a chance to hear a testimony that just amazed me of God's grace, forgiveness, mercy, protection. And it kind of reminded me all over again of what an amazing God I serve and his graciousness, his forgiveness. I find that my mind knows things that the rest of me try to forget. And frankly, a year ago, things weren't what I would have liked them to have been. And so it's kind of on that anniversary these last several weeks more. And it's over and done with, but I have felt kind of that weight of what a difficult season that was. And so, in that moment when I might have been tempted to reflect maybe too much, I've been reminded of God's goodness and grace and His mercy and how my story is such an amazing thing. So, I guess I want to encourage you take some time to reflect. Even if you were saved early in life, and boy, you don't have a real long list of regrets, how fortunate are you? But let's take some time this week, make some time this week to reflect on the grace of God. Okay, we're going to get started. Hi, this is Pastor Dave, and welcome to Persistent Hope. We have spent the last month looking at God and His character. You see, it's important to remember how we view God will affect how we view the world, how we view other people, and even how we view ourselves. Today I want to talk about God and His justice. God is just. That means he treats everyone the same way. He doesn't have a different set of rules for different people. And in everything he does in his justice, his desire is to have a personal relationship with each one of us. Now, look, we know we live in a time when it feels like there is injustice all around us. And it's easy to feel doubt that things will ever get better, and maybe even to feel a sense of hopelessness in what's the use of even trying to make things better. Nothing ever changes. But persistent hope comes from knowing God is who He is. He loves us, He created us, and He never changes. One of the ways we can see God's justice in our life is in the existence of absolute truth. You see, truth is always truth. It doesn't matter how many people say it's not true, it never changes. It's always true. Let me give you an example, kind of a silly one. When our oldest daughter, Melissa, was learning to crawl, she was wanting to show her independence every chance she could get. One time she was near a stove while a meal was cooking. Now, this was back in the day when they didn't insulate oven doors like they do today. We warned her not to touch the door, using words like owie and hot, but she got that determined look in her eye and touched the door. And she burned herself. It wasn't too serious, but it definitely hurt, and there were tears. You see, the truth was, the oven door was hot. It didn't matter that Melissa was too young to realize it and maybe a little bit too stubborn to obey. The truth was, when she touched the door, it burned her hand. God's justice has allowed us to receive His truth, which is unchangeable and can be depended on. In a world where everything changes and what we said was true 2 years ago is not true today, what a joy to have the justice of God. It's like having guardrails on a high mountain road. We're free to drive on that road, but we are protected from going in a direction we shouldn't go. Our culture wants us to believe that real freedom comes when there are no rules. The reality is, real freedom comes because there are rules. That's why Jesus declared in the book of John, chapter 8, verse 32, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So here's my assignment for you. Sometime today, bow your head and simply pray this: God, help me see and obey your truth today. God, help me see and obey your truth today. God bless. Talk to you on Wednesday. All right, let's go a little deeper on this thing about the justice of God and how the fact that He has given us truth is a great indication of His justice. We know if we follow Christ, at least we should know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that truth never changes. We can put our hope and our trust in God and His Word. It will stay true, and more importantly, it'll always be relevant. Our culture tries to change what relevance looks like, but the reality is, in a world where people want truth to change and be relativistic, we know that His truth never changes. It doesn't adjust, it stands. But here's a thought for you. When we commit to know God's truth and be in His Word, I believe what happens is God's truth takes us deeper. Truth becomes less something we know and more something we experience. You see, truth is as much a verb as it is a noun. In Ephesians, when it says speaking the truth in love, the word there in the Greek is literally truthing. Let me give you an example. Jesus said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one's come to the Father but by me. Do you know that when He said that, a lot of the hearers understood that He was painting a picture that they were already familiar with? You see, the temple of God had three parts to it that parallel to what Jesus was said. In the entryway to the temple, this would contain the bronze altar, which symbolized where the sins of the people were taken before God and were atoned for. So in the entryway going into the temple was the bronze altar. It was referred to as the way. It was the only way to get through the temple to the presence of God was by way of forgiveness. And what a reminder that we came to know the truth of God's forgiveness, that Christ died for us, for me, how that truth led us to go deeper. That's why salvation isn't just an episode at an altar or at a camp or a one-time prayer. It's a continuing life change. Now, when you went through the entryway, you go to what was called the holy place, and that would contain the furnishings that spoke to the prayer of God's people, to the communion with God. And that area, the holy place, that was called the truth. In other words, through the way you got to the truth, through the entryway and sins being dealt with, you got deeper into the presence of God, where there's a relationship of prayer and communion. And I'm just not talking about the act of taking communion, but the act of relationship, and you go deeper. And maybe you've guessed where I'm going. But the holiest place, the Holy of Holies, where the presence of God dwelt, where in the Old Testament only a high priest one day a year could enter in, but we are assured in Hebrews that we can go into the very presence of God. That was called the life. Where God's presence was security. Where God's presence was peace. And so the way, the truth, and life means as we come to truth, as we grow in truth, as we seek to live by truth, we're actually taken deeper. Have you ever noticed a verse you know to be true, and yet it seems like a year or two later, it's like you'll hear that verse for the very first time? It's like the truth is a whole new discovery to you. That's because truth is living. And it's constantly working in us to make us more like God. The deeper we go into truth, the less limited we are, and actually the more free we are. To those of us who follow Christ, knowing that the truth sets us free is no longer a matter of having hope for eternity. It's a matter of having security today, knowing that the truth we pursue and live for will never change, will always stand. And that's what we have to do to live in this world of hopelessness. This is what we have to do to show people hope, that we know that we serve a God who loves us, created us, and never changed. Now go out and live that hope today. God bless you.